Readings from Sri Aurobindo on realizing the psychic being. What is meant in the terminology of the yoga by the psychic is the soul element in the nature. The pure psyche or divine nucleus, which stands behind mind, life, and body. It is not the ego, but of which we are only dimly aware. It is a portion of the divine and permanent from life to life, taking the experience of life through its outer instruments. As this experience grows, it manifests a developing psychic personality, which, insisting always on the good, true, and beautiful, finally becomes ready and strong enough to turn the nature towards the divine. It can then come entirely forward, breaking through the mental, vital, and physical screen, govern the instincts, and transform the nature. Nature no longer imposes itself on the soul, but the soul, the Purusha, imposes its dictates on the nature. The psychic being emerges slowly in most men, even after taking up sadhana. There is so much in the mind and vital that has to change and readjust itself before the psychic can be entirely free. One has to wait till the necessary process has gone far enough before it can burst its age-long veil and come in front to control the nature. It is true that nothing can give so much inner happiness and joy, though peace can come by the mental and vital liberation, or through the growth of a strong shamatha in the being. The soul in itself contains all possible strength, but most of it is held behind the veil, and it is what comes forward in the nature that makes the difference. In some people, the psychic element is strong, and in others weak. In some people, the mind is the strongest part and governs. In others, the vital is the strongest part and leads or drives. But by sadhana, the psychic being can be more and more brought forward, till it is dominant and governs the rest. If it were already governing, then the struggles and difficulties of the mind and vital would not at all be severe, for each man in the light of the psychic would see and feel the truth and more follow it. What is meant by the psychic's coming to the front is simply this. The psychic ordinarily is deep within. It remains behind and acts only through the mind, vital and physical, wherever it can. For this reason, the psychic being, except where it is very much developed, has only a small and partial, concealed and mixed or diluted influence on the life of most men. By coming forward is meant that it comes from behind the veil. Its presence is felt already in the waking daily consciousness. Its influence fills, dominates, transforms the mind and vital and their movements, even the physical. One is aware of one's soul, feels the psychic to be one's true being. The mind and the rest begin to be only instruments of the inmost within us. If the psychic is awake and in front, it becomes easy to remain conscious of the things that have to be changed in the external nature, and it is comparatively easy to change them. But if the psychic gets veiled and retires in the background, the outer nature left to itself finds it difficult to remain conscious of its own wrong movements, and even with great effort cannot succeed in getting rid of them. You can see yourself, as in the matter of the food or other difficulties, that with the psychic active and awake, the right attitude comes naturally, and whatever difficulty there was soon diminishes or even disappears. Everything is dangerous in the sadhana, or can be, except the psychic change. The contribution of the psychic being to the sadhana is 1. Love and bhakti, a love not vital, demanding, and egoistic, but without conditions or claims, self-existent. 2. The contact or presence of the mother within. 3. An unerring guidance from within. 4. A quieting and purification of the mind, vital, and physical consciousness by their subjection to the psychic influence and guidance. 5. The opening up of all this lower consciousness to the higher spiritual consciousness above for its descent into a nature prepared to receive it with a complete receptivity and right attitude. For the psychic brings in everything right thought, right perception, right feeling, right attitude. That is the special work of the psychic being, to receive the true things from above and to send away the false things from below. There are always unregenerate parts tugging people backwards, and who is not divided? But it is best to put one's trust in the soul, the spark of the divine within, and foster that till it rises into a sufficient flame. If desire is rejected and no longer governs the thought, feeling, or action, and there is a steady aspiration of an entirely sincere self-giving, the psychic usually, after a time, opens of itself. These things, anger, jealousy, desire, are the very stuff of the ordinary human vital consciousness. They could not be changed if there were not a deeper consciousness within, which is of quite another character. There is within you a psychic being, which is divine, directly a part of the mother, pure of all these defects. It is covered and concealed by the ordinary consciousness and nature, but when it is unveiled and able to come forward and govern the being, then it changes the ordinary consciousness, throws all these undivine things out, and changes the outer nature altogether. That is why we want the sadhaks to concentrate, to open this concealed consciousness. It is by concentration of whatever kind and the experiences it brings that one opens and becomes aware within, and the new consciousness and nature begin to grow and come out. Of course, we want them also to use their will and reject the desires and wrong movements of the vital, for by doing that the emergence of the true consciousness becomes possible. But rejection alone cannot succeed. It is by rejection and by inner experience and growth that it is done. It is true that if the consciousness remains quiet, the psychic will manifest more and more from deep inside, and a clear feeling will come of what is true and spiritually right, and what is wrong or untrue, and with it also will come the power to throw away what is hostile, wrong, or untrue. In order to be constantly aware of the psychic, it is necessary to accustom oneself to do things from within, not to let the consciousness be thrown outward. If it is thrown outward, then to step back inwardly and regard the action or movement from within. Of course, there must be the habit of self-offering too, or turning all to the divine. As for experiences, they are all right, but the trouble is that they do not seem to change the nature. They only enrich the consciousness. Even the realization on the mind level of the Brahman seems to leave the nature almost where it was, except for a few. That is why we insist on the psychic transformation as the first necessity for that does change the nature, and its chief instrument is bhakti, surrender, self-giving, etc. The realization of the psychic being, its awakening, and the bringing of it in front depend mainly on the extent to which one can develop a personal relation with the divine, a relation of bhakti, love, reliance, self-giving, rejection of the insistences of the separating and self-asserting mental, vital, and physical ego. The deeper the emotion, the more intense the bhakti, the greater is the force for realization and transformation. It is oftenest through intensity of emotion that the psychic being awakes, and there is an opening of the inner doors to the divine. The psychic being has to be surrendered consciously and with more and more knowledge. The psychic aspires to the divine or answers to things divine. It is surrendered in principle, but it has to develop its surrender in detail, carrying with it the surrender of all the being. Aspiration, constant and sincere, and the will to turn to the divine alone are the best means to bring forward the psychic. Purification and consecration are two great necessities of sadhana. Those who have experiences before purification run a great risk. It is much better to have the heart pure first, for then the way becomes safe. That is why I advocate the psychic change of the nature first, for that means the purification of the heart, the turning of it wholly to the divine, the subjection of the mind and the vital to the control of the inner being, the soul. Always, when the soul is in front, one gets the right guidance from within as to what is to be done, what avoided, what is the wrong thing or the true thing in thought, feeling, action. But this inner intimation emerges in proportion as the consciousness grows more and more pure. Let the sweetness and the happy feeling increase, for they are the strongest sign of the soul, the psychic being awake and in touch with us. Let not mistakes of thought or speech or action disturb you. Put them away from you as something superficial which the power and light will deal with and remove. Keep to the one central thing, your soul, and these higher realities it brings with it.